Today's topic is automate everything from bookings to cleaning. And I am Arthur Kolker, the founder and CEO of StayFi, and I am joined by these wonderful folks from Hospitable, Turno, and Operto. So Derek, why don't you go ahead and get started and just briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, welcome everybody. My name's Derek. I work for Hospitable, but my journey started 12 years ago as a short-term rental host. I sort of accidentally fell into it, got my first property, then I found out about the all the great tax benefits. So every year for the last 12 years, I've done enough STR acquisition to offset my W-2 income. So I'm now managing about 26 short-term rentals north of Atlanta while working a very intense full-time job. So I have to automate everything. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those insights and hearing from our speakers. Thank you.
And Taylor, do you want to go and introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Taylor. Very impressive, Derek. And so I joined Turno about a year ago. I've been in this industry for about 10 years now. I started at Verbo when they were actually HomeAway, and then moved on to a couple different startups like Boutique, AirDNA, and then also Turno now. I have my own property in Denver, just one, but I understand the automating everything. It's saved me. I live in the Bay. My property's in Denver, so I'll explain some of that in this webinar.
And then Corey, do you want to go ahead?
Awesome. Thank you very much. So similar to Derek, I kind of fell into this industry just by chance. I was a general manager of a hotel and got asked to join a property management company in Whistler. And so I did that for 10 years. And as we continued to grow, had to figure out how to automate things because you can't do everything yourself. About 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to move back to where I was from and got out of my property management and I joined Operto. And now I get to work with property managers every single day and help them automate. So yeah, thanks for inviting me today.
Awesome. So just quick agenda here. We'll do a little overview of what automation means to all of us in short-term rentals because it obviously can cover so many parts of not just operations, but marketing and all parts of your business. Then we'll go and break down different parts of the automation ecosystem. So that's uh, automating bookings through your PMS, guest communications, data and marketing, things like access to properties, and of course, turnover and cleaning automation. So covering pretty much every part of your business, how all of those can be automated to improve your efficiency, operations, marketing, etc. Then we'll kind of tie everything together and look at the overall flow of what this looks like from the guest perspective, from your perspective, have some case studies, and then be able to answer all of your questions as they come up during the course of the session. So, what is STR automation? So really anything that touches your business where we can remove manual work. So that can be repetitive tasks, but also tasks that require a little more intelligence and nuance can now also be automated thanks to some of the great partners that we have here on the webinar. And they'll touch upon all parts of how their tools work, and then also some learnings that even if you don't use their tools, that hopefully you can apply to your own business and the set of products that you're using today. Because the STR technology stack that's going to work for every business is going to be a little bit different depending on what your needs are. So we'll hopefully you'll come away with how to increase, savings in terms of time, operational efficiency, scalability, consistency, reliability, making sure guests are having great experience, obviously increase response time. Obviously, we want to help you become more profitable and increase revenue and reduce human error. Anyone have any topics or areas that you think automation can help that are not covered here? Because I'd love to get the panel's thoughts.
I think this is a pretty robust list of things. I mean, most things throughout the guest journey or the operations fall in here. So nothing that jumps to mind for me.
Awesome. Uh, Great. So kind of talking about, we had a lot of folks we could invite to this webinar, and the reason we chose these three wonderful partners is because they cover so many different areas of your business. And obviously, I don't know, Derek, do you want to just give a brief overview of Hospitable? Because I think the PMS is kind of like the core function that every single short-term rental operator is going to start with, and kind of where you think you fit into this ecosystem.
Well, usually people consider a property management system or a PMS when they are, let's say, going from one property to two, or they're going from most people start on Airbnb and then add other channels like Verbo or Booking. All of a sudden, you're in bed before you get up in the morning, switching between the Verbo and the Airbnb app, right? And that's what a channel manager or PMS does. It allows you to manage multiple channels and have one unified place where you can do messaging. And that usually the trigger point for that is going from one to many properties, or maybe you have a few, or adding additional channels and adding things like direct booking website. So the PMS sort of operates as the hub, prevents double bookings. And then from there, you're able to tie into all these other systems like a Turno and an Operto and other systems. Now that you're making sure that your calendar is managed efficiently, you're not getting double bookings.
And then for Operto, obviously we'll go into a lot more detail later, but kind of where in somebody's journey do you find that people are coming to you and then wanting to really add this extra functionality to their current tech stack?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Arthur. So Operto, we really jump into the guest journey and the operations after the booking. So we're not a PMS, we plug into the PMS. And then from there, we're able to help people enhance whatever part of their business that they feel they could automate a little more or they want to adjust it just how they want to do it. Whether that is their door locks and their thermostats or creating a digital guest guidebook or scheduling their maintenance and their housekeeping and their inspection. So we kind of fall after the booking and then right up until the point where the guest is leaving, we help automate that in between part.
And then Taylor, for Turno, why do you feel like people, when they have a property management software already, are coming to Turno, and what functionality are they getting from you guys?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what everyone's been saying, but it's that management of the property. So what we're trying to do is help with turnovers, help with your automation of things like cleaning, making sure that your inventory is still full, your checklists are being completed, making sure that everything in your property is set up and you have that ease of mind that every turnover and every guest that's going to come into your property is going to have a great stay.
Right. And then finally with StayFi, we really take over on the automation side post stay. So where we come in is we want to make sure that after all the guests leave, that we are marketing to them on a consistent basis so that they are aware of your unique brand and are coming back and booking directly with you for future stays and not through the OTA. And we'll talk plenty more about that down the line. So now, Derek, here's a chance. Can you maybe just go into a little more detail about when people come to Hospitable, kind of like what are the first things when someone is getting a PMS? Are they automating, which before they were doing kind of manually prior?
Sure. I think the first is adding extra channels. Channels that most people start on Airbnb. Maybe you're in a pure vacation destination where you start on Verbo, but usually people, as I mentioned earlier, are adding an extra channel. That's the number one trigger point of getting to a PMS. Most recently, we've seen a lot of hosts also coming and wanting a PMS to add like something like booking.com, which is a channel that's been doing a lot of advertising around the World Cup that's coming up. I'm here in Atlanta. Prices have 4 to 5x in this area. And given that there are a lot of international travels and booking really caters for that, that's been driving a lot of PMS migrations as well. But it's not just adding a channel. It's okay. What the PMS does is designates your first listing. Let's say you start with Airbnb as what we call your lead listing. Then all you have to do is press a button and you can replicate that listing across the other channels, right? So what you see actually in the screenshot is the example of one of my properties. Right before I got onto booking.com, I have Airbnb, I have Verbo, I have my direct booking website, and there's a one little button that says continue, and I can just press a button and replicate the pictures, the listing, the title, descriptions, the pet fee, without having to go through that laborious process to kind of create the listing. So it makes it easy. I mentioned creating a direct booking website. A lot of people start, you get started your first year, all of a sudden you start getting people saying, hey, I want to come back next year if they had a good experience. And if you're able to do things like collect the email address, which a lot of these platforms support, but especially StayFi, with its Wi-Fi gateway, then you can offer them to come back and stay on your direct booking website, but then you have to have a website, right? And then once you get these extra listings on once you get a listing on other channels, then you have to manage them. Right. So then what happens if you want to, like, I change my photos 2 or 3 times a year to cater for the season. Right. So if you're in a, let's say, mountain destination, you probably want to be showing, the foliage in the fall, in the August, September, October period. But if it's winter, you might want to show the ski slopes, right? If you have now, you're on 4 or 5 channels, you don't want to have to go change the pictures on 4 or 5 channels. In a property management system, you change the headline, change the pictures once, and it propagates automatically out to those. So that's a big benefit. And then there's one centralized place for kind of your standard automated messaging, and then other partners like StayFi, Turno communicating with your cleaners, and Operto kind of doing some more advanced messaging can take over from there.
And just, is there anything about when somebody's going and they're Airbnb only and they're adding these channels? Are there anything like that are channel specific that you help automate, especially for Verbo and booking, that you think people should be aware of when going beyond just listing on Airbnb?
Well, yes, every channel has its own nuances, but what we've done is we've mapped up things like cancellation policies because they're all called a little bit of something different. Like Verbo, you'll have, Airbnb will have a house manual. Verbo has like a house policy or a house contract. There's these little nuances where we've tried to sort of match up the terms. I think there's also when you onboard onto, like, let's say a booking.com, like if you just go through booking.com standard listing onboarding, you can actually make your listing go live and get reservations without completing your bank account process. And so we see a lot of people who come over before they go into a property management system like, oh my gosh, I just had 3 bookings with booking.com and my guest didn't pay me because they're used to the process of Airbnb and Verbo, where we've tried to match up that process and make sure that the flow inside the property management, okay, we need to replicate your photos, replicate your listing and your headline, but hey, we were going to prompt you a little bit more that you need to input your payout information. So we try to map those nuances. There's still sometimes to finish your listing, you do have to go back in the channel, like things like adding your bank account information for payout and stuff like that. But yeah, there are lots of little nuances, and those little things are usually the friction which prevent people from going to a channel because they're kind of like, I'm not sure how it works. And that little bit of confusion prevents them from getting on a whole channel that could end up being 15-20% of their revenue.
That's such a good point. And then obviously, once you get a booking or a booking inquiry, you want to be able to communicate efficiently with them. So, kind of where do you find, or how can you advise someone to go about how to start automating that communication with either booking inquiries or with actual bookings from guests?
Yeah, that's it. The screenshot we have on here is an example. We use things called short codes and custom codes, which are more advanced messaging triggers than like what Airbnb offers out of the box. And I have a 91% review rate. 91% of my guests leave a review. Why is that the case? Because a lot of times you just ask for a review and you hope that they leave it, and you're addicted to the adrenaline of the next booking, right? Or the next issue that's coming up in your property. Well, what Hospitable does here in this example is we have a multi-layer rule that says, hey, I want to request the review, but I don't want to continue sending this message out if I've already received the review. So we tie into the channel in this example, Airbnb, and say, hey, like I have actually 6 requests for a review. Now that goes all the way up until the 14, the review period is open for 14 days, but most hosts just ask for it once, and they ask for it the day of checkout. And that's like the craziest day for the guest, right? Because they're traveling, they're just trying to get home or get on to their next location. So I ask for it on the day of checkout, ask for it the next day, 3 days later, 6 days later, 9 days, and I'll keep it. But if they've given it to, I don't want to look like a fool if they've already given it to me, right? So I have this layer. So that's just one example of like a PMS will allow you to have some more advanced messaging options. In this case, really to drive reviews. Reviews are our currency for credibility. And then if you click if you click to the next slide, this is an example here. I took this GIF actually this morning. So I had a guest who booked for, I think it was like 11 days. And then they said, hey, we've had a change in our plans. Would it be possible for us to change to 4 nights? Now, I have a strict policy. They booked this like 4 weeks out. If I were to, the kindness in my heart wants to say yes, but I'm a business, and I have a policy here. And so you can see actually there's this little suggest with AI button down in the bottom in which I have all of my rules with how I handle this type of situation. And instead of me, you can see I sort of, I go wherever, start typing. That's the tender-hearted in me. But then I just hit the suggest with AI button, and it sort of helps me overcome this. And then I actually tell it automatically replies with what my real response should be, which is, hey, we're a business. We have a strict policy. We're going to abide by it. But if you go ahead and change the reservation, you send the alteration, right? And then if we're able to rebook those days, then we'll offer you a partial refund. So we give them some option instead of just saying no. Just another way I don't have to think about it. I'm busy. I had 2 webinars before this one today. If I would have had to start typing that out, a Slack notification would have gone off. I would have not been able to write, and maybe it wouldn't have been such a good guest experience. So, in addition to the scheduled and time messages, we load in our rules and those suggestions. I can press a button, suggest the correct response. I could edit it, of course, if I want, but it ensures that I'm more consistent with the guest experience.
And with things like the rate review flow that you showed, do you have when someone onboards with Hospitable, do you have like recommended flows or kind of guest communication, like, oh, activate the get the review, or are people typically generating that on their own based on just their own experience?
Yeah, we have about 12 messages based on like different triggers that are already pre-populated out of the box. So as soon as we connect your channel, we know the guest name, we can connect all that. So yes, whether it's like requesting a review, whether it's requesting like an upsell opportunity, if like the night before, the night after their check-in and check-out's available. So those come pre-populated. We help get them configured with our onboarding team without the person having to go actually manually create the templates.
Great. Now, kind of moving over to Operto. Obviously, you guys can pick up in a lot of places where the PMS lets off. So maybe just cover a little bit here about kind of where you step into the guest communication automation landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, definitely automating those, short messages and those emails and all of those automations is really important. But what we can also offer is going a little bit further than that. Like communication doesn't necessarily have to just be about, sending a text message or sending an email. And so we can help with some things like digital guest guidebooks or kind of going outside of that text messaging of giving them something where you can use a web-based app. So this is something that we hear from a number of our customers is that guests don't necessarily want to have to download an app. If they're coming to Atlanta for the weekend, they don't necessarily want to add another app. And so offering a web-based app of something that they can just open up and use without having to download it or having to put in registration can be a really frictionless way to get that to the guest. And then you can also be communicating with them almost through a self-help way of giving them that digital guest guidebook of they can just click in and ask for an early check-in. Or you can upload videos while they're, how to actually get into the door or where to go find the front door and enter their code. Even something as simple as the first morning they wake up and there's a wonderful cappuccino machine, a video on how to use the cappuccino machine. So guest communication can go even that much further, and we can help our guests with that, of really making sure that the home that they've booked, they're seeing the information about that home, about how to get there, or even what's around it. What's the closest grocery store or the closest cafe? So we can help digitalize that and kind of take it that next step further. Yeah, for them to maybe have less calls or less emails and put that in the guest hands.
And I'm just curious, since here you have the examples of like early check and late checkout, how does that typically work from an automation standpoint? Is it manually approved, rules based, some sort of intelligent approval? How do you guys approach like making sure that adding upsells doesn't create a whole lot of extra work for folks' staff?
Yeah, that is going to be customer to customer basis because of course, as we all know, every property manager has, different resources. And so we'll really work with the customer to figure out, do they just want to blanket do it and then scramble around to figure it out? Or do they want to do it on a request basis because they have to check with their cleaners first to find out the capacity? I mean, one of the last things you'd want to do is do an upsell and then not be able to deliver on it, because you can really end up in trouble that way. So the automation, again, can be customized based on their business, their demand, maybe even changed by season. Maybe in the summer when they have a full staff, great, let's just automate it. But in the off season, not. So again, kind of similar to how Derek was saying, we do have some different triggers that they can set up based on allowing it a certain amount of time before a check-in, or based on different rules. So those automations can be put in place, but it's based on what the customer wants.
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, looking at this again, we kind of want to remind everybody that the customer journey doesn't happen when the guest first walks into the house. It really does happen right after they've made that booking. And so it's important to make sure you're looking at all those touch points throughout. The pre-arrival of, are they getting the right communication beforehand? And do they have a smooth check-in? When I was prepping for this, I was thinking about at the end of the summer, I booked a vacation rental, and I'm a bit of a worrywart. And I had got no communication on the day that we were driving to go to this cabin we'd rented, which is out of Wi-Fi. And so the whole way down in my brain, I was like, how are we going to get in? How are we going to access it? Sure enough, we got to the property and still didn't have a code, and we had to drive back. And so right away, my journey didn't start off on the best foot. So really making sure you're looking at all of these things. Do they have the answers in stay? Can they reach out to you? Do they know what to do upon checkout? So we can really help them look at all of those touch points so they have a smooth stay all the way through. And then at the end, you can get that good review.
And obviously, one big part of what you guys do is all around access. I feel like that's when I first heard about Operto. That's what you guys were known for. And obviously, you guys have expanded a lot outside of this. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious, where do you find people like in that whole operational journey? How do you evaluate kind of like where to focus, or like what part of the guest journey you guys can make the biggest impact on, or they can see the largest ROI?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. We did start out as an access company. That's how Operto got into the game almost 10 years ago. And so, yeah, some of the things about operational excellence that sometimes people overlook is starting right at the very beginning. You've signed on that new house. Let's make sure that you pick the right hardware. I mean, some people just think, oh yeah, I can go online and, get a TT lock or get whatever and slap it on the door. But we can really help them walk through like, well, wait a minute. You're on the coast. Have you thought about how this lock is going to stand up to salt water? Or actually, that's a sliding door. And so you can't just put a, regular lock on it. So we really have the expertise and the 10 years of knowledge of helping them pick great hardware. I think another thing we really walk through with people is to remind them to work with their homeowner. If someone brings their home to you and the very first thing you're saying is, oh, yeah, you've got to replace your lock with what we use, that might really not be great with them. So we always remind people to really listen to your homeowners, try and work with them. And we can work with a number of different locks. And so look at what lock they have, but also listen to what is important to them, right? I mean, their biggest concern might not actually be getting bookings. Their biggest concern might be, I don't want grad parties happening with underage guests. And so we can help with verification. And so I think it's finding the right mix of things that are going to give your homeowner security and make them feel comfortable giving you their greatest asset. And then moving on to that check-in and check-out. I mean, it's making sure that you're giving not just a great check-in, but the whole guest day. So how do I turn on the dishwasher? Or, where can I go find the closest kids store to buy a jacket for my kid? Um, so, I mean, really, each of our customers, it depends where they're at. People might come in and be like, hardware's not my thing. I actually really need to set my team up for success. I need to make sure my team knows how to get into the property and knows what that owner wants. So, the biggest ROI depends on each of the customers, but we can really help with all of those different areas based on what they have. They might come and say, no, my PMS does the hardware. but I actually need a great digital app. So yeah, we can kind of help in any of those areas, but it's all about listening to each person and what their tech stack needs or where they need the ROI. So yeah, again, we kind of have three pillars that we work in. We've got the Operto guest, where we can help with that guest communication and making sure the guest has that information, or even doing that pre-arrival check of verifying the guest if that's something that is in there. Access, locks, thermostats, different things like that. Even complex things like maybe they have to open a gate to get into a private estate before they even get to the door. We can help with those complicated things. And then, of course, scheduling of your preventative maintenance, inspection, cleaning. And the really great thing about using integration partners is that you can pick and choose what's important to you here. Maybe all your homes need guests, but only 10 need access. You can really sort of take a look at that. Yeah, and so that's kind of where we dive in, where you need, what pieces you need to enhance in your guest journey or to help your owners or to help your staff.
Fantastic. And if anyone has any questions, please add them to the Q&A. If there's any part of that you want to learn more about. Now I'll just talk a little bit on the marketing side because we've talked a lot about operations, access, cleaning, listing. Derek touched a little bit on direct bookings, which is something that a lot of people want to drive more of and become less dependent on those channels. So the way StayFi comes into that is that we provide email and text marketing tools to make sure that anyone who stays with you, whether they're the guest, the booker, all 20 people there, are aware of both your brand and why they should come back and book directly with you in the future, or even refer other people to book directly with you. So the core of our product is really just introducing your brand when someone joins the Wi-Fi and then collecting data that we can use for marketing from them. So when someone joins the Wi-Fi in your property, they get the branded splash page just like you would have seen at a Starbucks or at a hotel, where then they enter their name, email, phone number, they opt into your marketing program. Then we can redirect them anywhere you'd like. And then we can start automating marketing messages to those guests so that we can educate them about your brand and why they should book directly. And the important thing to note here is that all of the automation we've talked before is very much oriented towards the booker. So we're talking to the person from Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo or from your direct site. This is a way that you can kind of go one step back and start speaking to the entire guest party. So in many cases, this may be your first opportunity to communicate with the non-booking guests. So in StayFi, we have a bunch of email marketing tools and text marketing tools. But when it comes to automation, we basically help you set up a series of marketing emails that get sent to every guest, both during and after the stay. And we can pull in information from your PMS to make those emails very easy to build. So things like property details, pricing, availability, all of that is accessible through our email marketing tool. So you can think of it as like a MailChimp, but just with a lot more short-term rental specific features. And so some of the top automations that you can set up in StayFi, number one is Wi-Fi welcome. So the moment the guest logs into the Wi-Fi, we are triggering an email to them. And in that email, we will automatically include for you all of the necessary information that they need during the stay. So we will insert the correct guidebook link for that property. We can link them out to the correct part on your website where you have local activities and amenities and things that you recommend. And then, of course, communicate how they should reach you if they need help. And then finally, include some sort of value proposition about why they should come back and book directly with you. And again, up until this point, right, if this is an Airbnb booking, for instance, the booker, most of the guests there, they're going to say, we booked an Airbnb. And this is where we can start to transform the guest mindset from they booked an Airbnb to they booked a your brand property. And then, of course, if we include this messaging like book your next stay direct and save, we can integrate the idea that booking directly in the future is better for both you and the guest. Then, of course, we can automate post-departure emails and not just one, but a series of emails. So a good example is you can set up a series of emails that get sent every 30 days to all of your guests to continue to remind them that, hey, if they're looking to travel again, here is a great reason to book direct. Here are great activities in our destination. Here are the great homes that you can book. Here are, all the things that you can do at XYZ season where we're located. And that way you're building loyalty and brand recognition with those guests because they're probably not booking a trip most of the year, but we just want to make sure that when they're booking their next trip, that, oh, they remember that coming directly to your website is preferable and they will save money. And then other types of automations we can send would be things like stay anniversary. So we can follow up with all your guests automatically 8, 9, 10 months from their last stay and remind them, hey, you stayed with us in Hawaii last year. Now is time to kind of book again for your next trip if you want to get a property at a better price. So all these automations can start driving direct repeat bookings for you automatically once you set them up. And they kind of just continually are on once you go through that process. So it's a great way just to make sure that everyone that stays with you, no matter how they booked, knows that when they need to book their next trip, that booking direct is better value for them and for you.
Arthur, if you mind to make one comment on there, I think the
Mhm.
things we hear about, like our customers love about that particular StayFi feature is, especially if you have multiple properties in an area, a lot of hosts assume, well, if that property is booked, then they may not be interested in coming. They stayed at that property. They were happy. I think what Arthur's email flow does is it automatically looks at the availability of the other properties in your property management software, recommends those. And I think that drives a lot of repeat bookings. I also think another overlooked thing on this is showing a potential host. If you're trying to pick up property management contracts and you show them that this is what you do, like, hey, I have 10, 15 properties, and I use that email list to market, and your property, if it's available, gets listed to those other guests. It's a really sneaky way to just show that you're a little bit better than the next property management company, shows you have a level of sophistication. And when it's so difficult to pick up contracts, or sometimes owners are squeezing you on your 20 or 25% commission share, showing them things like that shows that you're worth the little bit of extra percentage. And I've directly had customers point out that the StayFi integration and promoting that sort of helps them get an edge to pick up contracts.
No, it's definitely a great point. And I always recommend people add their owners to their email marketing list because you want them to know all the great work you're doing to promote their properties. And the feature that Derek references, we kind of we look at your calendar and we will see which properties are free and we automatically insert those properties with the prices for those dates into your emails. Because I think sometimes for good reasons, people like to include their most booked, most spectacular property in their email marketing, but then people click on those and they go look and they can't book them because they're completely full, right? So, where StayFi can really come in there is we want to make sure, or we want to help you book nights that otherwise are not going booked through OTAs or are going to get booked at a lower price as those dates approach. Because we don't talk about pricing automation here, but obviously a lot of the pricing tools are cutting rates as nights approach because they're trying to get that booking through the OTA. We can help advertise those dates to your loyal audience further in advance to try to get those key nights booked. And now, Taylor, I know you've been waiting on the sidelines for a
Yeah.
while, but I'd love to hear more about Turno. And then I think the one thing here that really stood out to me was the backup cleaners and kind of like your network of cleaners, which is obviously one of your kind of biggest value adds. So I'd love to learn kind of how that integrates into the automation piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start by saying I love these conversations because as a host, we're consistently learning, and I've definitely picked up a few things from what we've talked about today. But yeah, to get started, we'll start with the automated turnover scheduling. So, we've heard from hosts daily that they have their kind of systems and their scheduling, and those systems are Excel spreadsheets or text or phone calls. And, um, you know, sometimes those can fail. And when they fail, that's where you get those negative reviews. And like Derek was mentioning, those are our currency. They lead to cancellation and refunds. You're moving them from different properties. It's a kind of a burdensome process when something doesn't work out. So, the automation through PMSs like Hospitable, and then connecting with a platform like Turno, it can really help you with that automatic scheduling. I'll relate it throughout this, but I was living down in South America for half the year when I started my short-term rental journey. And I really needed to rely on a system that had a good scheduling. And when I'm asleep, is the cleaner going to be turning over my property? So scheduling is such a great automated system. The next, like you mentioned, uh, the built-in backup cleaners. We always think that our cleaners are the greatest and we can rely on them heavily, but it's that one time that maybe they don't show up or they have a last minute booking or it was left off their system. What Turno does really well is we have a plan A, a plan B, and even a plan C, and we rarely get to that plan C, but we're accounting for making sure that if we don't hear from a cleaner A before a certain time, then we're going to be reaching out to that cleaner B and making sure that you can rest easy and understand that my property is going to be turned over and my guests are going to be happy and can expect the same expectations that I see my place being at when a guest checks in. So I think that is a really big value add that Turno does, and they do it really well. And then also, if you do need another cleaner, we have the marketplace to go find those cleaners instantly, and you can see, this cleaner is available, and then they can come to your home. The third thing I want to call out here is our automated payments and invoicing. So again, we see a lot of hosts doing this pretty manually. So you think Venmo and Zelle, and we think that this is going to be like a 10 to 15 minute process. But, after a while, when you're doing this frequently and having to do this on the weekly basis, that time adds up. And sometimes when, if you were to slip on a payment and you had to wait till the end of the month, you're left with a bulk sum payout, which sometimes that can be tough on a business, and especially when you're trying to scale and want to make investments. So another thing that Turno really does well with terms of automation is we provide the cleaners with 1099s. We deal with all the third-party banking apps and making sure that all the payments are on the platform so that you can rest easy at night and make sure that your payments are going through, your cleaners are being paid, and you're not hit with back taxes or penalties or interest, all those things that can be burdensome for the scaling of your properties. If you go, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I had one question. I'm just kind of curious, how does the process work versus like onboarding your own cleaners you work with today versus like finding cleaners through the marketplace, and how does like searching or looking in the marketplace look like for a host or a property manager?
Yeah, great question. So we have two options. We have our marketplace where you can go and search for cleaners in your area, and you're able to put in the details of your home, do the search, and then you have pending bids for people who want to come in and clean your home. And then we also have a platform where you can invite your cleaners. So people who are on your current team and you've relied on them for years with other properties and you want to bring them into the marketplace, you're also able to do that. And then we're also working on a services side. So how do you build a marketplace where you can bring in other things other than cleaning? So things that are broken, a guest has made a complaint. Like, how do you find these people in this marketplace? And we're giving you the availability to bring in your own or find one through our marketplace. Yeah, the fourth point I want to make is the real-time status and accountability. We highly encourage people to implement processes, and we want you to have these uniquely to each property. When you are building on Turno, you're building a unique checklist, you're building a unique inventory list, and you're building all of these things that they can be a little burdensome sometimes. And you really want to make sure that, when you're first going on and implementing these processes, that you're building them correctly. And then that's where the automation comes in, and you're able to make sure that my checklists are up to date, and I'm making sure that everything is detailed, like photos that you want to have your expectations for a cleaner to have your home set up. Like you have your checklists and making sure that those are all being detailed. Inventory management, you want everything from toilet paper, paper towels, everything you can think of from an inventory management system. You want those, accounted on and made sure that every time a new booking comes and a cleaner comes in to turn over your house, everything is set up correctly as you would like it. And then going in pretty similarly with that scalable operations, um, you want to make sure that although it's time consuming, you're putting in the efforts to make those checklists and making sure that the automation is sent to the cleaner and a new turnover project is scheduled for them. It's the reliability that you can really set a scalable operation based on the work and initial work you put into it. Um, Again, automation for these types of systems, we have the backup plans to make sure that they're implemented correctly, and it's also scalable. That's the biggest thing I think, in my opinion, is once you have this first property, you're able to go and scale this using the work that you've already put in.
Yeah, I'd love to if it could just reiterate what Taylor's saying of we often have people that come to us and they say, "Oh, I only have 5 units or I only have 6 units." And we're like, that's actually the best time to start because to Taylor's point, you do have to put the effort in to set up a custom checklist for a 5 bedroom house versus a 2 bedroom apartment. They're totally different. And so if you start early, then every time you add a property, you only have to do one more thing to put on and one more to add. And so, we often say to people you know, like what when's it going to break you? Like at what point is your not having automation going to break you? Is that going to be at 10? Is it going to be at 15? It's not too soon to start with this automation, but also to Taylor's point, make the time to set it up properly. So once you create that checklist, it's there and everybody knows what they need.
Exactly.
That's a great point because I talked to a lot of operators that definitely reached that breaking point of a certain number of properties where suddenly the way they did things before is not working, and then it's such a scramble. And maybe you've lost, you know, owners, or you've had some guests with bad experiences, and that's kind of where things are going to break first. So it's never too early to start
Totally.
all these different types of automations. Um, Now just kind of covering all the different pieces of this whole guest journey, which we talked about because we have so many different things where these different tools plug in, but really starting with making sure you are listed everywhere you can, because obviously that's going to maximize your bookings, and that people are having that great pre-arrival communication about all the details of the property, all the types of upsells you offer, whether you have a fantastic um, digital guidebook like we saw with Operto's guest portal. And then when people are in the property, I really like to make sure that we are branding appropriately because we want to make sure we're collecting data in an automated fashion and then remarketing to those guests also in an automated fashion because we need to break the hold that the OTAs have on those guests and make them learn about your fantastic brand and why they should book directly with you. Then hopefully in property, we are sending the right types of messaging. We're making it easy to access the properties. One thing I always like to recommend folks do, and I'm sure uh, you've had this experience, is try to access your property at nighttime, with the instructions that you have, because I'm sure we've all had the experience of coming to a short-term rental, in the dark, and access can be extremely challenging sometimes if you don't have lights and the right instructions set up and all those things. Then, of course, important that once the guests are there, we're tracking any relevant issues that are coming up during the stay and making sure we are cleaning and turning those properties in an efficient manner, and making sure people are available, which Taylor talked a lot about. I love the plan B, plan C, because I'm sure when you have a guest arrive and the property is not how you would expect, that is often the worst experience you could imagine. And then going back to Derek, those reviews are crucial. That's like the bread and butter of maintaining your high ranking in OTAs, and your ability to efficiently collect them makes a huge difference. And then, of course, marketing to everybody after they leave so we can drive hopefully more of those bookings directly. So many parts of the journey, all these different tools can touch on. Now, Hospitable. I know you have this great case study. So, and then we did get a question about what makes you different than Hostfully. So maybe in this case study, you can highlight why you think your property management software is, the one that people should be choosing, because obviously there's a lot of options out there that someone can select.
Yeah, sure. Well, the case study we have here is of David Green. If you follow the Bigger Pocket podcast, you know who he is. He led one of the most kind of hottest runs of Bigger Pockets. He actually used Hospitable, left to I think Hostfully, and then came back. So maybe he's like a good example here. They left for a reason, then came back in a month or so. But David was actually had hired a full-time property manager, and then when sort of his business changed a little bit when he was not the lead podcast host on Bigger Pockets, took back the management, and he was able to double in 12 months. Once we got all the automations with the messaging, direct booking, all the AI messaging, and he has a team. Um, now who does this, and he now is promoting, using his brand and picking up properties in a very fast way. They're managing these properties across different markets also. So it's, like I think I'm a wuss. All my properties are within like 10-mile radius. I can't imagine managing, you know, dozens and dozens across different markets. So he's able to do this across different markets with confidence. And he's doing this by using all the hospitable automations. And a couple of the screenshots you see on here, Hospitable, our entire product, like our mission is to gift hosts time back through these automations. And we love to see these things of what people do with that time back. And so they amped up their social media game. So people who were normally doing like manual things now are like posting on social media, posting the reviews, posting the before and after shots. And he's able to spend more time picking up the properties. I think I would say, what separates us, it depends on what you need. I can't say for sure that we would be an amazing fit for you. It depends on what do you like about the solution you're using, and we offer a free trial. You can actually connect up. We are the only PMS where you can actually stay connected to, let's say, Hostfully, Guesty, Hostaway, whatever, and then try us out in parallel. So you could connect a channel, see how our messaging works, see how our AI works without having to make this decision to sort of cut over. Everybody's product looks great when they demo it. I promise you that. But we offer a trial, and we are the only system you can connect in parallel. So give us a shot. You sign up for a trial, someone will reach out to you. Just be sure to tell us what you like and what you don't like, and we'll be straight up with you for a good fit.
A great answer, and I love that because similar with you guys, we let people create email marketing accounts or use StayFi before they are paying customers, and I always find that's the best way to kind of test it out for yourself to see if it's the right fit. So even our email marketing product, no matter what property management software you use, if you sign up for our email marketing product, you get a free email marketing account up to a certain number of contacts. So you can start sending emails right away. And if I believe you're under 150 or 200 contacts, depending on the PMS, it's free. So I love being able to test drive things before I commit to being a paying customer. In our case study here, it's pretty straightforward. I just really wanted to show what a difference it makes to start seriously collecting data in an automated fashion from your guests and remarketing to them. So this is a property manager in Michigan called Juniper. They manage, when we started with them, I think it was really 30, 40 homes. Now they probably have more than 100. And in one year, we're collecting over 10,000 guest emails. And that's from many fewer bookings, right? Because per reservation, we're collecting 5, 10, 15 emails from that stay. And then, we drove for them last year over 240 direct bookings. Many of those direct bookings led to higher occupancy in those properties. So this is like a very seasonal market. You can imagine in Michigan on lake, not big in the winter, huge, completely full for the summer. But what they found is they were able to take the loyal audience, market to them, especially around shoulder seasons, nights that they were going for less money and that they knew would not be booked completely through OTAs. And they were able to increase their occupancy in those shoulder season times of years where it's much harder to get bookings. And so that means that this booking didn't replace an Airbnb booking. It was a net new booking because they were educating these customers, especially many of them who drive to this market, about why they should return and check out fall and spring. in Michigan. And then, of course, because we're a Wi-Fi product, there's other Wi-Fi benefits that we also automate. So we will automate things like occupancy alerting, outage alerting, things to make sure all your guests are having a great stay experience and that we are protecting your homes from potentially too many folks or more folks than are currently booked in that reservation.
Awesome. And so Mountain Creek, they're a really great group that we got to work with. They are a four-season resort that is in New Jersey. And kind of similar to what Arthur was saying about some seasonality bits, that's one of the real things they were struggling with, is that because they were four seasons, they would have peak seasons and quiet seasons. And what they started to struggle with was that often they had a very small team trying to do everything. And so they were falling between the cracks with things. I mean, sometimes the front desk would be running up to clean a room and then they were missing a call or not there to tell a guest how to access their room. So when we started chatting with them, we actually discovered that they had pain points that we could help with our entire full suite. So they actually started using our access product to get away from key cards and start sending mobile keys and door codes to their guests so that the guests could just check in on their own and not have to come to the front desk. They also started using our guest portal, which again gave the unique, they had some like condos and some townhouses and some more hotel type rooms. And each person could have the specific information about where it was they were staying. So if they were staying in the main lodge, how could they get to the pool? Those sort of things. Whereas if they were in a townhouse, how do I turn on the dishwasher? So the guest portal really helped free up their staff from answering those questions or having to take phone calls of where they're staying. Guests could just get that themselves. And they also did our product, which helped them pre-schedule their preventative maintenance in those off seasons, make sure they were scheduling inspections to happen. So if in the off season the unit hadn't been occupied, they could go in and make sure they were cleaning it up. So a couple stats here on the screen, they increased their average daily rate. They did this with being able to offer some of those early check-ins, but also not having to even block rooms from being rented because they weren't sure when they were going to be able to get them cleaned, reduced housekeeping, overall just better reviews, as we said, the currency. And a big one that I hadn't even really thought about, but kind of came to a surprise afterwards, was they saved more than $10,000 in key cards, getting away from those plastic key cards that they were using by going to that digital check-in. So that was something they hadn't even planned for, and they were happy to report back to that. So yeah, they were a really great one to work with, and that's our case study.
Thank you. And then Turno, here we are.
Yeah, so there's two case studies that I wanted to talk about today. One was with our Pacific Properties Management, and they're actually a mutual customer with Hospitable, and their story of how they scaled from 4 to 55 properties. And some of the problems they were facing was missed cleans. They had not real-time turnover progress. You can imagine, even with 4 homes, you don't really know what's going on in the property, especially if you're not right there. They had a lack of a system of trying to track and resolve maintenance tasks and doing that quickly. All these manual processes, they add up. It's 4 to 5 hours weekly per property. And so you think if you're trying to scale your business, that's something that you don't want on your plate right now. And so what they did in order to scale from that 4 to 55 properties was they started using Turno and helping them automate their schedule for cleaners. And they were able to assign tasks to their cleaners, leveraging the checklist per property and making sure that here's a photo of what I expect the property to look like. If you have any questions, here's the documentation. Even from an inventory standpoint, like I want to know when I have 4 paper towels left and when do I need to order more. You think about all of these things that you have to keep track of, and the systems that I talked about earlier, having those in place and having them all in one-stop shop basically gives you like that property management sense right from your phone or computer. So that was a really awesome one for us to just see how people are utilizing automation to scale and using automation just for reducing their weekly time where they can be spent improving their business. And then the second one here is Travel Furnished, and so they grew their property count up to 32. And this was a mother son. They were scaling their properties, and we asked them how they managed to get to those 32 properties. And one of the things they said was they cut their manual turnover management from 10 to 12 hours per week to nearly zero. And so you think about how much time they're spending with marketing and the business and what they're going to buy next. And then another interesting thing with this case study was that they had a guest claim that they were owed $1,500. The Turno cleaner was able to take a picture of the item and timestamp it. So as soon as they came into the property, and when you go to an OTA and you have to make those claims, they want specific evidence. And so to have that evidence every time, every booking, you're not going to go in and take pictures of everything every time right away. So to have that being accounted for on Turno's side is great. And so, these tools are essential for running and scaling a successful rental business, and providing the reliability and the safeguards help you grow with confidence. So I think that these kind of prove that.
Those are great. And I see we did have a few questions, but it looks like they were very specific. And so our panelists did type those answers and provide them to you in the Q&A section. So if you go back to the Q&A section where you input your question, you should see the answers to those. If anyone has a question they'd like to add, they can do that now, or we can end the webinar in a minute or two. I will say we do have another StayFi webinar that we are hosting coming up in a few weeks that I'm very excited about, that we'll be sending a invitation out. We're going to have 4 different companies that provide direct booking websites kind of going head to head. So a little bit more of a contentious perhaps roundtable about why you should pick their product to be your direct booking website. So I'm super excited about that, as we should get all the best tips and tricks about deciding to pick your direct booking website if you want to go beyond what your PMS offers. And yes, so we did get one last question about a recording for this. We will be publishing this to StayFi's YouTube channel shortly, maybe today or early tomorrow at the latest. And then, yeah, can everyone just share quickly if they want to learn more, what's the best way to reach out to you guys? And we'll just go in the same order. So Derek, do you want to start first?
Hospitable.com. Hit that free trial button. Someone will reach out to you.
Yeah,
Reed, do you want to go?
Sorry, me next?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
next.
awesome. So yeah, similar, Operto.com is the best place to reach out to us. And then we've got another thing there. You can just go ahead and book a demo. Or also, when we do share this on one of the slides, we had a QR code. You can scan that QR code. It will take you right there as well. So yeah, Operto.com is the best place to reach out to us.
And Taylor?
Yeah, from Turno's side, turno.com. Please reach out to our CS team or our sales team, especially for demos, or if you have questions, you can also reach out to me directly through LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. And then if you're interested in StayFi, you can go to stayfi.com/demo, and you can also book a demo with our team. And yes, this recording will be up tomorrow. And thanks again, everybody, for joining. And thanks to our lovely panelists for their time and insights. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.